Okay, guys, so we're going to pick up where we left off last time we were together. We were talking about different types of touches. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so raise your hand if you can tell me what is one type of touch that we talked about last time, Lizzie?
Like if you push someone.
Okay, yeah. Anybody remember the name of that kind of touch? Peyton, do you remember the name of that one? It's a touch that hurts your body. What is that called? What is that called, Jade?
I was gonna say another one.
Okay. Unsafe. Unsafe touches are the ones that hurt your body. All right, tell me another one.
Ask permission before you're ask a parent before you drink something or eat something like that.
Oh, yeah.
The last time that we was here.
That was a couple of times ago. It was the always ask first rule, right? Okay, I'm glad you remember that one. Okay, so we have unsafe touches. We have what other kinds of touches?
Safe touches.
Safe touches. Those are the ones that make you feel loved and cared for, like hugs, right? So we've got safe, unsafe. Jaden, what's the third one? Okay, that's one of our that we talked about at the very beginning. That was one of our never nevers. Remind me, what was the other type of touch?
Uncomfortable touch.
Uncomfortable or unwanted touch. So those are the ones they don't hurt your body, but they make you feel uncomfortable. Now, do we just let people hurt our body and make us feel uncomfortable? No, we learned two things that you're supposed to do if somebody's making you uncomfortable or hurting your body. Do you remember what those two things are? Chloe, what do you remember? Yes! Ask them nicely to stop. That's refuse, right? Saying words that mean no. And then what's the other one? What if they don't stop? What's the other one?
Report.
Yep. Report. Tell a grown-up. Good. Okay, so recognize, refuse, and report. We're going to use those 3 R's today. We're adding a new rule to what we've already learned about, and it is called the touching rule. Okay, so the reason I have this picture up here is because our touching rule has to do with the private parts of your body. Now, the private parts of your body are the parts that are covered by a bathing suit. So that's why this picture is here, to make sure that you know what I'm talking about. Here's the rule, and we're going to break it down. This is what it says. A person should never touch your private body parts except to keep you healthy. All right, so this first part, a person. Notice it doesn't say an adult, a teenager, a child. It says a person. It doesn't matter who they are. A person should never touch your private body parts. Remember, the parts of your body that are covered by a bathing suit.
But what about
And so your private body parts, the word private, that just means keep it to yourself. So like if somebody told you something and they said, oh, it's private, don't tell anybody. You just keep it to yourself. It's the same thing with your private body parts. Nobody should see your private body parts. Nobody should touch your private body parts. And that's what the rule says. All right, here's the rest of it. Except to keep you healthy. Now, I want us to think about that. Who are the people that keep us healthy? Peyton, tell me one. Your parents. Okay, I'm glad you said parents. Now, here's the thing. That makes me think about like when you were a baby and you wore a diaper. Could you change your own diaper? No, you couldn't change your own diaper. So your parents did that, and they did that to keep you clean and healthy, and that was okay. Now, I want you to pause for a second and think about that, because even your parents can't touch your private body parts unless they're keeping you healthy. That is the only reason that this rule can be, that's the only exception to our touching rule. All right, now tell me, besides your parents, Jack, who's somebody that you go to keep you healthy?
Doctors.
Yes, exactly. So sometimes you go to the doctor and you're not sick. You go for a well check. You know what I'm talking about? Just to make sure that you're healthy. And the doctor checks every part of your body to make sure that it's working properly. And that might include your private body parts. And that's okay, because the doctor is helping to keep you healthy. They are the exception to our touching rule. So, other than the doctor or nurse or your parents, if they're helping to keep you clean and healthy, nobody touches your private body parts. Not for any reason. Okay? And not even jokingly, because that's not okay. It breaks our touching rule. Do you have a question?
That happened to me once when I went to the doctor.
Yep, and it does, and it's okay. That happens, and it's totally fine. It's the exception to the rule. All right, so I'm going to pop this up here. I want to tell you a story about a time when the touching rule was broken. When the touching rule was broken. Okay, so this is Avanti. Avanti's uncle lives down the street, so he's over at her house a lot. Sometimes her uncle takes her fun places. He says he likes it when it's just the two of them. He tells Avanti she's his favorite niece. Yesterday, he took her to see a movie in the afternoon. Avanti was so excited. She'd been wanting to see the movie since it came out. But during the movie, Avanti's uncle started touching her legs all over. Avanti could feel her heart start beating faster. She felt really uncomfortable. The feelings in her body got worse when her uncle put his hand up her skirt and touched her private body parts through her underwear. Okay, does that break our rule?
Yes.
Absolutely, because he's not keeping her healthy. Okay, now I want to go to that uncomfortable feeling that she was feeling. She got this weird feeling like, oh, this isn't right. Should she ever ignore that?
No.
No, you have to listen to that, because that feeling is part of recognizing that it's not safe and that the rule is broken. So she paid attention to the uncomfortable feeling in her body, and they helped her recognize that her uncle broke the touching rule. All right, so what do you think after she recognizes that this is not okay? What should she do next? Raise your hand if you can tell me what comes next after you recognize that the rule is broken.
You tell them to stop.
Yeah, that's refuse, right? So tell me, well, we'll get back to that. Okay, so refuse, absolutely. You tell them to stop, and we talked about being assertive and making sure that they know you mean business, but also in a respectful way. All right, and then what? After refusing, then what, Lizzie?
You can say, hey, can you stop doing it because it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yep, and that's a good way to refuse. What comes after refuse, though? What's the next step? Report, yeah. Yes, so if the touching rule is broken, you always have to report. And we'll come back to that because that's important too. Okay, so Avanti firmly pushed her uncle's hand away from her body. Then she stood up and moved away from her uncle to a different seat nearby. Her actions told her uncle no. So that's the refuse. Then, this is what's happening. This is the next thing. Now Avanti is reporting to her mom about how her uncle broke the touching rule earlier that day. She doesn't want to upset her mom, but she knows she needs to report the broken touching rule. She feels nervous that her mom won't believe her. Okay, so let's pretend for a second. Let's pretend Avanti's mom doesn't believe her. What should Avanti do? If she tells her mom that her uncle broke the touching rule, but Avanti's mom doesn't believe her, what do you think?
If I was her, then I'll tell her this to her mom. It's really true that happened. And you can ask my uncle because it really happened.
Right.
And I really felt uncomfortable when he done that.
Yes. Okay, so you could try to say it again in another way, and if you bring your uncle in, he might tell the truth, but he might not.
Because he feels nervous.
Because he knows he broke the touching rule. So what else could you do? What if that didn't work? What else? If you tell a grown-up and they don't believe you about the broken touching rule, what do you think, Christina?
You can tell your brother, which is a teammate.
Okay, you can tell somebody else, right? You could tell your brother, and your brother could help you find some other grown-up to report to. If you report a broken touching rule and they don't believe you, you go tell somebody else. If they don't believe you, you go tell somebody else. And you keep on telling until somebody does something about it. Because it's not okay that the touching rule is broken. So you just keep telling. Okay, so that was just pretend. Avanti's mom believes her. She says, I'm so glad you told me, Avanti. It's not okay for him to touch you like that, and it's not your fault that he did. Your dad and I will talk to him about it. Now Avanti's uncle is getting some help with his touching problem. Avanti feels safe and protected by her family. All right, so is everything good now? Yeah, because she followed recognize, refuse, and report to keep herself safe. Now, I really liked what the mom said about it's not your fault. Did you know that? If somebody breaks the touching rule, it can never ever be your fault. It's the person who broke the rule, it's their fault. So sometimes, I'm glad we're talking about this because sometimes kids, if the touching rule is broken, they're so embarrassed or ashamed, or they feel like they did something to make that happen that they don't report. They don't tell anybody because they don't want to get in trouble or something along those lines. So that's why I'm telling you, it could never, ever, ever be your fault if somebody broke the touching rule with you. And I don't ever want that to keep you from reporting. Because let's think, if you don't report, what could happen? If you don't report when the touching rule is broken, what could happen?
They could keep doing it.
Exactly. They can keep doing it. So you have to tell to make it stop, and you have to tell a grown-up. I'm glad you said teenager, because you can tell somebody your age or somebody who's a teenager, but it has to go to a grown-up because the grown-up is going to be the one to make it stop. But if you tell somebody your age, they can help you report. Okay,
Not like your
so
baby brother or your
oh
little
no,
brother.
absolutely not. Okay, so now I want to practice. I want to practice some different scenarios where the touching rule is broken. I want you to tell me exactly what words you would say if this happened to you. And then we're going to decide who would you report to. All right, so let's try this one. A student touched your private body parts while you were riding the bus on a field trip. All right, does that break our touching rule?
Yes.
Okay, so if this happened to you, Marissa, what words would you say?
I would move to a different seat and I would tell a grown up that is like nearby. I would tell like the bus driver, or when you get off the bus, and you could tell your mom or dad.
Okay, I'm glad you said the first part about just move to another seat. You don't even have to say words. Moving to another seat is refusing. We'll come back to the rest of what you said because it's really good. What's another thing that you can say, Kaden? What's another thing that you could say to refuse?
You could say stop it.
Beautiful. 2 words. If you say it like you mean it, that'll work. Yes, Violet.
Please stop it. I'm not even joking.
Okay, yeah. Ooh, that tells me you mean business. Good. Okay, now I want to switch to who would you report to? Marissa said the bus driver, or wait till you get off and tell your mom. Who is somebody else that you can report to? Chloe. Yeah, so if you're on a field trip, the teacher's probably going to be on the bus, right? What about if it's not your teacher? Can you tell that person?
Yes.
Yes, you can tell any of the grown-ups that are around because they're going to help make it stop. Now, I want to go back to waiting to get off the bus and tell. I really don't want that to happen. Here's why. If anything like this were to happen on a field trip or in the school building, I want to handle it. I want to be the one that makes sure that you're okay and that you're safe, and I want to be the one to call your mom and say that it happened. I don't want you to go home and be upset and tell your mom that it happened, and then she is upset and calling me. I'd like to handle it immediately so I know you're safe and I know that I can share the information with your mom. So I'm glad you said that, but let's make sure that we tell before. Jay, do you have a question?
Yeah. Don't you have cameras on the bus?
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. There are cameras all over the bus, and they're the best cameras because they record sound and everything.
Yeah, but even if you're not on a field trip and someone like touched
you're just
your
riding-
private part
If
and
you're just riding the bus, yeah.
yeah, and you got to tell the teacher and you got to tell your parent, no one knows.
Oh, yeah. I need you to remember, and I need you to tell, okay? I think if it happened to you, you would remember. Okay, let's try this one. Your babysitter touched your private body parts while you were sitting on his lap. Does that break our rule?
Yes.
Okay, so raise your hand if you can tell me, how would you refuse? What would you say or do to refuse, Lizzie?
I would say, hey, can you stop touching me? I feel uncomfortable. And also, you're breaking one of the rules.
I love it. Very, very detailed. I love it. Violet, what would you say?
Don't touch my private part. It's making me move.
Yeah. So don't touch my private parts. It's making me feel uncomfortable. What would you say?
I would get up from my babysitter and then like go like a little bit away from her and say, stop it. You're touching my private part. It's making me really uncomfortable, and I learned it in school that you're breaking the touching rule.
Wow, that was a great answer for sure. That was similar to what Lizzie said, but yes, it's beautiful. Perfect. So I also like how you said, get up off of the babysitter's lap. You're not just going to sit there and let the person continue to do what they're doing. Moving away is part of refusing. Okay, so now we got a report. But it's just you and the babysitter. Who are you going to report to? Jaden, who? Yes, so if you have a phone or a tablet that has Messenger or something, you can call your parents and let them know immediately. I like it. What if you don't? What if you don't have that immediate contact? Ahmad, what would you do?
Like if my parents were on a date and I had like an older brother and he was at college, he was almost off, I would tell him like what had happened and he would deal with it.
Okay, yeah. So like an older sibling who's a grown-up is a good choice. Yes, you could absolutely do that. Kaden, who would you tell?
So if your brother was just a little bit far away, and he comes by, you could go outside and say, hey, my babysitter is touching my private body parts, can you help?
Yes, you can. As long as that person's a grown-up or can get you to a grown-up to report. Peyton, who would you tell? Okay, yeah, so you probably wouldn't be alone with the babysitter. It would be you and your brother. And so you could tell him, and then you guys could figure out how to report it together. So even if you have to wait until your mom comes home, that's okay. As soon as you see another person, I want you to report. Could you go to a neighbor?
Yeah.
You could go to a neighbor. Somebody that you
nice to you.
trust. Somebody you trust. As long as you know them and trust them. Yes, you can go and you can report to them. So there are a lot of options for people to report to. All right.
I got one of them.
Hold on one sec. I want to try one more. Okay, so this one is a library volunteer who always chats with you when you go to the library, sat down beside you while you were reading a book, and touched your private body parts. Does that break our rule?
Yes.
Breaks the touching rule for sure. Okay, so how are you going to refuse? Somebody I haven't heard much from. My friends in the back, I want to hear from you. How would you refuse if this was happening to you? Maddie, you want to say? You don't. That's okay. Go ahead. How would you refuse?
I would move away from them.
Okay. Absolutely. Moving away is refusing. What else could you...
Kill teachers.
Okay. What else could you add to that, Lizzie, besides moving away?
I would say, hey, can you please move away? I'm trying to read my book and also you're touching me.
Okay. I like it. That was very respectful, too. Ahmad, what would you say?
Can you please, that is making me uncomfortable.
I like it.
If you don't, I will tell my older brother, can he right next to me? Like, what if your older brother next to you?
Yeah, so I like how you said, if you don't stop, I'm going to tell my older brother. Hey, what if the person does stop? Are you still going to tell your older brother or a grown-up?
Yeah.
Yes, you're still going to report. Even if the person stops breaking the touching rule, you are still going to report because it's already broken. It's already broken. You can't come back from that. All right? So now, who are we going to report to? This is happening in the library. Tell me, Chloe, who would you report to? Okay, somebody in the library you would find? Like the librarian? That would be a good choice. That would be a good choice. Who else could you report to, Peyton?
If there was another grown-up in the library, you could tell that person.
Oh, like me? Because I'm in the library right now. Yes, I'll be a good choice, right? Because I'm here. What if I was just like standing right outside the door? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Marissa, who would you report to?
But what if they keep doing it and when you told them to stop?
Okay, even if they keep doing it and you tell them to stop and they continue, that's why you report. And then that grown up is going to make sure that they don't do that to you anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why reporting is, to me, it's the most important step. Because the grown up, after you report, is the one that makes it stop. And they're the only one that can make it stop. Anybody else? Who would you report to?
Like an older sibling, like in their class, like an older brother or older sister.
Okay. So if there was somebody like an older student maybe in the library, you could report? Okay. As long as they help you go and talk to an adult, that's a good choice. Okay, so there are lots of people that you can report to. Here's what I need you to know about school. At school, every grown-up in this building is trained to help kids if the touching rule is broken. I train them every summer before school starts. We talk about this, and we talk about, hey, if a student comes to you and says that the touching rule is broken, these are the steps that you need to take. And so you can approach anybody in this building, the custodians, any teacher, anybody who works in the cafeteria, the principals, me, the librarian, anybody in this building. If you tell them, hey, somebody broke the touching rule and I'm uncomfortable, they're going to stop everything and then they're going to bring you to me, and then we're going to figure it out. Before you even walk out of this building, we're going to find a solution, and we're going to make sure that you feel safe. So that's what I need you to know about this happening at school. Okay, I think you get it. You guys are awesome. You know how to recognize, refuse, and report. So I want to wrap this up with our Ways to Stay Safe song, which is all about recognize, refuse, and report. We're not going to get up today, but I want you to sing. I want to hear you saying the words today. Here we go.
Be alert and ask yourself, is it safe? Does it break a rule? Stop and think. Stop and think. 3 big R's. Recognize, refuse, report. 3 big R's. Recognize. Does it feel safe? Stop and think. Does it break a rule? Recognize. Recognize. 3 big R's. Recognize, refuse, report. 3 big R's. Another R is refuse. If it's wrong, then just say no. Just say no. Just say no. 3 big R's. Recognize, refuse, report. 3 big R's. One more R and that's report. Tell a grown up, don't keep secrets. Tell someone. Tell someone. 3 ways to stay safe. Recognize, refuse, report. 3 big R's. 3 big R's. Now you know the use them well. Recognize, refuse, report. 3 big R's. And stay safe.
All right, excellent job. I heard lots of you singing. Fabulous. All right, well, that's it for today. Whenever we come back together, we will talk more about our touching rule.